Welcome to our Oceania webinar exploring best practices for pastoral governance at the service of Christ's mission. It's wonderful to be here with you today. Just a couple of things to note as we start. The first is that we are going to be having this Zoom recorded, so that was sent to you in the materials beforehand, so just be aware of that we are being recorded today. The secondly, that we are putting you on mute as you arrive, but we will be having an opportunity not just from hearing from some of our keynote speakers today, but also for some small group conversations. So when you do enter into small groups, please, you can unmute yourself, and if you're not sure how to do that, I'm sure someone in your group will be able to assist you. I invite you just to join me as we begin in our acknowledgement of country. Although we are meeting virtually, we continue to acknowledge the traditional custodians that have, for so many years, walked upon and cared for the lands upon which we are individually located. We pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. We're also aware that here today we are in our New Zealand, Australia emerging COVID bubble, which is a beautiful thing, but we know that we're also contained in a God's bubble, that beautiful reign of God, and we know that that bubble stretches far wider than our two nations to encompass not just our world, but the whole of cosmos, and stretches back from the beginning of time to its fulfillment. That's a beautiful bubble to be part of, and one which we continue to seek to expand ourselves. But let's just really recognize the space that we occupy, the divine space of love, that communion that we're in, as we gather in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. And come, Holy Spirit, come, open our hearts to who you are. Open our hearts that we may be seized with the same fervour and love that you have for each of us and for our world. May we be filled with the same love that you have, the same mission and purpose that you have, the same joy and mourning and grief that occupies you and the divine life. And we accord ourselves more and more to who you are, and what we seek to be and do and embody. We pray particularly for the gift of leadership. Help us to recognize that we are all leaders, and may we support one another in this important space of leading and serving, particularly in this mission, your mission, to bring all into the fullness of love in the divine life. We make these prayers through Christ our Lord. Amen. And I invite us to, I'd never like to actually end with the sign of the cross after a prayer, because I believe this whole experience is one of a prayerful encounter with one another. It's a space of shared discernment, shared wisdom, where we encounter the other Christ, our brothers and sisters in Christ, and it's a terrific opportunity for that. And to encounter one another, we're going to begin just by, first of all, you might be wondering who is the bloke talking. So my name is Richard Mcmahon. I'm the Director of Pastoral Planning in the Diocese of Parramatta. So that's just in Western Sydney. And I'm accompanied here today. We'll be introducing a few more people in a moment. My work in the church has been probably over the last 25 years or so, parishes, dioceses, and working also on state and national levels. And a particular passion for this sense of community and bringing community into a more sort of, I suppose, explicit relationship with our God and one another, and the exciting and amazing journey that God invites us on. So it's wonderful to be here with you the screen to just acknowledge a few of the people that are supporting our webinar today. So we have our Pastoral Ministry Network, which is a group that is in New South Wales. It used to be called NAPPA, that was the short title for that, of ordained and lay people that collaborate in this space of mission and work together, and it's been operating for quite a few years now. The Mission Planners Network of Oceania is a collection of New Zealand and Australian pastoral planners, and the Diocese of Parramatta, and in particular at this stage acknowledge Lisa Bright, who's been helping us with those polls there, and you would have been getting all these emails and lots of things from her support behind the scenes, and Tanya Quinn and Marissa Vanderhout, who are supporting us from the Chancery here at Parramatta today in our experience. So thank you to all of those. So as we move on to, before we go any further, I suppose, first of all, why are we all here today? Well, hopefully you had a sense of watching the videos. If you haven't had the chance to do that, you will still be able to experience this webinar, but we do encourage you afterwards, if you can, to go back, and if you can, just to watch them, experience them for what they are. But in terms of today, we're going to be having a bit of a conversation, firstly amongst yourselves in small groups. We'll come back and talk around this topic of leadership, and then we will move to more intentional small group conversations and come back for some more questions and comments towards the end. So we hope that it will be a fruitful experience in that way. Just as we begin, we want to, I suppose, think about the coming to the small groups. If I can put up a screen that might have some questions for the groups. Okay, and we might have a slide for that too. So Elisa's just put into the chat a space you'll be moving into a group where you can introduce yourself, and that you'll be able to just, I suppose, find out just where everyone's coming from, at least in your small group around leadership. Just as before we open those rooms, I just want to, I suppose, think about leadership has become a big buzzword in our church in the last couple of years. And I think it's primarily one thing I've been thinking about is that old movie Flying High, and that gets to the point where I think that all food poisoning has happened to everyone in the cockpit. And so the air hostess has to come out and they say, just be careful, don't panic the passengers, but we just might need some support. And she says, look, there's nothing to worry about, but if there is anyone that knows how to fly a plane, could you please help? And and of course that causes a huge amount of panic. So we know that in our church, we're moving through some complicated turbulence, probably at times, on our mission. And it's not so much, we know that some people occupy roles of leadership, but the controls perhaps on the panel in that cockpit have become far more complicated. In fact, even the map and the destination as where we're going continues to evolve. And for all those reasons, we need to look more explicitly at what sometimes used to just be a given. Leadership was just something which we experienced or accepted, but now we're really looking at some beautiful toolkits that exist both within our church and in civic society. And of course that it's not just a few people in that cockpit, but we know that it's become very much more an expanded space of co-responsibility. So for all those reasons, we are here today, but I really want to now open that conversation to yourselves. So let's just we've got 5 minutes now, just to share in small groups, introduce yourselves, choose someone to facilitate that 5-minute time well, and let's just share your own experience around leadership. Thank you. Everyone's back. Fantastic. Well, welcome back, everyone. I'm glad you've made it all back safely. I hope that you had an opportunity to at least say hello to a few people and get a sense of who's who that here today in at least your small group. We're now going to move to have a bit of a conversation with our two guests here today. So I want to introduce you first of all to Teresa Briley. Teresa has worked in the Diocese of Maitland Newcastle since 2005, and in her present role as Director of Pastoral Ministries, Teresa supports Bishop Bill Wright as a member of the Diocesan Leadership Group in pastoral matters across the diocese. So that includes parishes, chaplaincies, family ministries, pastoral planning, diocesan councils, etc. And prior to this, she has served as a pastoral associate in the secondary school as a religious education coordinator, maths and science teacher. And she's also got I notice here, biomedical science background in hospital pathology. So that could become useful today, Teresa. So you're most welcome, and we're here today. So welcome, Teresa. And we also move to Mike, our other guest today. So Mike Stopforth is the Director of the Bishop's Pastoral Office for Christchurch Diocese. This is a role that provides pastoral planning, coordinating the priests we have on loan for overseas and special projects. His team includes people working on varying ministries of pastoral life in the diocese, safeguarding, evangelisation, archives, clergy care, prison, hospital chaplaincy, seasons for growth, to name a few. So we always have a lot of hats, I think, in these roles. In the past year, he's headed a team looking after the restructure of parishes in the diocese. And prior to leading the Bishop's Pastoral Office, Mike was a director for Diocesan Youth Ministry for 11 years. And both Mike and Teresa are married, families, but not to each other. So you're very welcome today. Welcome, Mike. And Teresa, can I just get a hello from you?
Hello, I'm here.
Welcome.
Hello.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. So first of all, I just want to say a big thank you for the videos that you put together for us. I found them really eye-opening, really, in terms of the wonderful things that are happening in both your dioceses. So thank you so much for that. We've got about 15 minutes just for a bit of a conversation now. And so I wanted just to begin by going to that first question that was on the flyer. And Teresa, I'm going to pick on you. So just from your own experience, and we've heard a lot from that video, for people that may not have experienced that, or just your sense of what are the existing emerging models of good pastoral leadership in parishes and dioceses. So what's been happening for yourself in that area? Thanks, Teresa.
So thank you, and it's nice to be here, and welcome to everyone from across Australia and the ACT, clearly. I'm just going to touch on parishes initially, and so you would have seen a slide in my presentation around the various models of leadership that we have in our parishes in accordance with Canons 515 and 517.1 and 517.2. And so, you know, we have parish priests and we have deacons, parish leaders, parish leadership teams, we have priest supervisors, we have sacramental priests, and we have moderators. And how we choose what happens in our parishes, the bishop doesn't say, oh, look, I think this model will work there. So people from the leadership group go out, they meet up with the parishioners, and we actually explore what model might work best in that parish, and given how many priests we've got and that availability, we work with parishes to work out how that might work. And we also, in most parishes, would have a parish pastoral council and parish pastoral teams and finance councils. I noted that in some of the parishes around Australia, there are still pastoral associates, but we don't have any of those anymore in our place. From a diocesan perspective, you would have noticed from my presentation that in 2017, we went down the pathway of many parts, one body, one mission. And as a result, we have a diocesan leadership group. We've now appointed a chief executive officer. and we have this Diocesan Leadership Group and then an Operations Management Group. So in the Leadership Group, there's about 8 of us who meet regularly. In the Operations Management Group, which are heads of service areas in that model, there are about almost 40 people who meet in 4 times a year in that group. Of course, we have the Council of Priests, and Bishop Bill renamed our Diocesan Pastoral Council a Council for Mission. So you can hear there's an intention on mission, and we're really still learning how to do that. So once you make a change, it takes a while to make those changes. And clearly we have a Diocesan Finance Council. We also have other councils around ecumenical and interfaith social justice, faith formation, liturgy, youth, and women. And so those councils have a particular role in those spaces. And then we have connections with other Catholic organisations and agencies. So we see ourselves as a whole. So, you know, we're trying to look at how leadership works in the Catholic Church in our diocese. But I sort of thought about this and I thought, so everyone who's involved in leadership within our, either internally or to our agencies or beyond our agencies to other public juridic persons, have the following responsibilities. So pastoral, spiritual, administrative, cultural, strategic, synodal, sector specific, and most specifically faith. So as I capture it, we're in a time of transformational leadership, and that transformational leadership requires us to be relational. We would hope that those people who are in leadership roles and in relational leadership have a sense of call, or that vocational call that we're trying to lead disciples together. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Teresa. And it is fascinating to hear about what's been happening there in terms of, you obviously are looking at new ways. You're on a journey, as you say, that and so part of that sounds like renaming is very important for you. I particularly find it interesting that that Council for Mission moving from the Diocesan Pastoral Council, that emphasis on mission, and that leadership team. If you can just maybe name for us who's on the Diocesan leadership team. I mean, don't know names, but the roles.
Yes, so the Chief Executive Officer is the Chancellor and the Vicar General, then myself as Director of Pastoral Ministries, the Director of Safeguarding, the Director of Shared Services, the Director of Catholic Schools, and the Director of Catholic Care. And then we have a change management person who sits with us and is trying to work with us in this change management process. And then intermittently, the Bishop meets with us. So tomorrow, the meeting, we'll have the Bishop meeting with us.
Terrific. Thank you. And Mike, if I go to you just to hear about your experience of, the models. Teresa, it was fascinating to hear about those 6 types of parish models that exist as well in Maitland, Newcastle. But welcome again. And what would you like to share with us initially in terms of your experience of merging models?
Thanks, Richard, and good morning, everyone in Australia, and good afternoon to anyone in New Zealand. It's really great to be with you for this webinar. It's interesting to hearing from Teresa about the various models that are operating in the diocese there. Here in Christchurch, we're looking at a one model approach, and if you've seen anything in the video prior to the webinar, our focus really is on an emerging model of establishing new larger parishes that have been amalgamated and developing parish leadership teams. So that's the model we're really working towards. So we've been working on this for a couple of years. It was proposed in Pentecost 2019 and on a vision document called Our Faith, Our Future, put out by the Bishop. And then Pentecost this year, it came into place. So it took a year, but it's been quite a full year, I have to say. On the video, I mentioned for us larger parishes here in Christchurch City. We've gone from 12 to 5 parishes, and for us here in Christchurch, they're not small parishes that have been amalgamated. They've been quite reasonable size, with 4 of them having an 800 mass count on a Sunday. So as well as a structural change, it's really developing leadership teams. That's really our focus. Priests and laity working together in a new way. So our priests have been in place since January this year, and the new parishes, as I said, came into place at Pentecost. Ultimately, the leadership team, ultimately the leadership of a parish is under the parish priest, but we want these leadership teams to be collaborative and to together lead and make the best possible decisions for the good of the whole parish. So for the leadership teams, we're starting with our 5 new parishes here in Christchurch, and we've got very good people. We're clear that we're not about doing elections. We're about discerning and identifying the right people for the job for that as a transition team or leadership team. We've also begun to look at some clear priorities, and the bishop's come out with 3 clear priorities, and that's helping to guide us in terms of our leadership from him. What does this mean for our parishes and for our diocesan chancery and a curia? One little sideline is that we've got international priests, like many of you do. We have also Vietnamese young men who come over and learn English and go on for formation as a seminary and then ordained for priesthood here in Christchurch. So we've just had one 2 weeks ago. So that's our 5th Vietnamese man to be ordained, and will be here for life as a priest. So that's a changing face of our pastoral leadership into the future. And the benefit, of course, for a long period of formation, 8 to 10 years, is that there's a chance for them to grasp culture and enculturation and to wrestle with all of that. So that's been quite a long-term project, but we're seeing the fruits of that now through ordinations to priesthood.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Mike, and again, all the best to you on that journey, which is obviously still unfolding. I suppose one of the things I thought about when I looked at the videos is we try to sort of put our best foot forward in terms of what is happening, but there must be challenges or learnings along the way for you both. And so maybe, Teresa, just a couple of points in terms of if other people are interested perhaps in going your direction, either at a diocesan or parish level, what would be a couple of pointers for them?
I think for us around the challenges, it's the shifting models. So we're moving from a model that is almost a couple of thousand years old, where we've had a parish priest or clergy model of leadership, and we're shifting the models, and so it's really difficult for people to make that shift. So let's say, for example, we have a parish leader who's a lay person. Then people tend to place on them what they placed on the ordained priest, and yet that's a totally different model. So, like for the regular people who are connecting with church, and even for the local community, it's a really difficult shift to make because it's such an ancient model. So that's the struggle that we have. And the other thing is that for some of our clergy, they look upon the people who are in lay roles as professional Catholics, because they've got some, background like myself in theology or whatever. And so there's a struggle in both dimensions as to how we actually adjust to this new way of being church. And I think we're just meddling our way through it. And for us in our diocese, what came to me this morning is we're doing this in a time of grief and loss and trauma in our own church from an institutional reality. And so what we're doing is we're making these major changes at the same time that for our own diocese, we're in that suffering space of the impact of child sexual abuse that it's had on us. So there's this institutional trauma, and we're actually also then trying to make this change, and we're trying to look for those opportunities. So I hope I've sort of addressed that, Richard. Thanks.
Yeah, well, that's very challenging. So no, thank you for that. And Mike, anything to add from yourself, just very briefly, a couple of points?
Lots of challenges. Obviously, our context is structural change, but the distinct communities, bringing distinct communities together, different geography, different demographics, ethnicity, culture of a parish. I'm sure many of you will kind of resonate with that in terms of amalgamations. COVID's been a challenge. we looked at, with Pentecost, we were in lockdown at that time with COVID. Do we go for that period of amalgamation or do we not? And for a variety of reasons, we went, and that created its challenges as well. We're not gathered as a community to work through that. And I think one of the effects is not allowing people enough space to lament, to grieve the loss of change, and to walk people through a process of change. So that's been a real challenge for us. And I'm not sure what it's like for you. New Zealand's back into pretty much regular life, but we're back at Mass, we can gather, but our numbers are down. So it's COVID and it's parish amalgamations. And I've been challenging our priests about, we're being quite, I believe, reactive rather than proactive in terms of connecting with our people. And with the structural change, do we really know our sheep? Are we connecting with them? Do we know them? Do we know where they're at? So there's lots of challenges in there for us. I think as we get bigger for our parish communities, we need to get smaller, so the smaller group process as well. And I think that's a cultural shift for some Catholics, to invite them to be part of small groups. And I think we could have done a lot more in terms of education and formation prior to the structural change, to say this will be one of the pathways we're going along in terms of inviting people to be part of small groups.
That's terrific. So people don't lose, particularly as you're moving those parishes together, they're not losing that sense of individual identity and connection. And that's, I think, very important. I suppose as we think about this, one of the questions I did have to you, but I'm going to move over that to another one. But collaboration and co-responsibility are very important in this space, and how we bring that to life. We might be able to come back to that after we move people to small groups. But what I wanted to just focus on before we send people off for a bit of a chat about what they're hearing is, how does pastoral leadership enable and enhance community engagement and support our mission to share the good news of Jesus Christ? So I suppose what I'm asking here is, how do we not lose sight through all this work that we're doing and restructuring and new models and connections and so on and so forth, that we don't lose sight of the very one that seeks to animate us, the very one that as church we are on mission with. So Teresa, again, I might move to you. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lisa is just going to put up a slide that I might talk to. Thank you. Thank you. And people would have seen this slide just on my presentation. And it starts at the top. One of the things in the plenary council space you will have noticed, and certainly in our diocesan synod, is the need to have listening or relational meetings. So as a church body, that I think who we are as communion or as community is relational. So if we actually in the pastoral leadership space, and no matter where we are, like I talked about the different directors, I think that's essential that you have these relational meetings, and anyone who's in the community organising space will understand this particular cycle. So once you embark on that, and one of the pitfalls that we've had, I think, is that we've done too much listening and not enough action. So we've never actually got to action, and people have become really, really frustrated. So I think it's then essential in pastoral leadership to actually do some research and planning around the information that you find out from people. And then you move to literally making decisions, but making those by discernment, and, listen to what the Spirit is saying, what is each other saying, what are we hearing in our scriptures prayerfully, how are we doing that? And I know that people think they're doing it, but I just wonder, and I even question as we're preparing for our synod, how well we're trying to do that with a synod working party. And all of that is based on the fact that we have a story. And one of the things that we're discovering is that we need to look at our foundational story, the story of Jesus. What is that story telling us? And then from that story, what principles, and you would have noticed that in the document from the Southern Cross, what principles emerge, and therefore how, for example, is someone in Catholic care Or how does someone who's in Catholic schools or in our USH or early childhood, how are they actually meant to be the person of Jesus in that space? And therefore an authentic witness. And then, you know, we move to action and then we begin the cycle all over again. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you. And Mike, just from your own point of view, just that sense of how do we continue to centre ourselves in the mission of God?
Yeah, and again, our context is structural change, and I think the Bishop is saying that, you know, that's a real jolt for us, for people in terms of structural change, and he's okay with that. It's forcing us to think differently about mission, and it's uncomfortable for many, but it's forcing us to think about mission in a different way. I think we need to be clear about why we're doing this, why we're on about structural change and about mission, and we need to keep articulating that about that relationship with Christ. So that's something that needs to be, I think we need to keep articulating. I think for us too, we're embarking on a more defined planning process than we've had in the past. And the Bishop was coming with his 3 priorities. He's supporting that by diocesan staff, people being employed to really service and support our parishes in that planning process. And he's very much around the whole sense of accountability, but as a shepherd, you know, it's not going to be bashing parish priests over the head because they haven't done this, this, and this. It's really that heart of supporting parishes, and it's a long-term project. He sees this as a 5 to 10 year project, and how do we really support people? In terms of pastoral leadership too, he's very keen to think about what happens from Monday to Saturday. Sunday's foundational for us, the heart of who we are, but he says that's not enough for us now in our secular world. What happens from Monday to Saturday? So the small group conversation I was talking about before, supporting people in their faith life from Monday to Saturday, that kind of leads us to the Eucharist, of course. Yeah, so leadership, I think, is really important. And a couple of us were attending, we hosted the Global Leadership Summit last week here in the Chancery. 400,000 people worldwide attend the Leadership Summit. So we want to really build leaders when we, all of us are leaders, whether we're priests or lay people, diocesan staff, volunteers. We want to really invest in leadership, and the better leaders we are, the better our church will be. So we're really trying to support leadership across the board in our parishes.
Thanks, Mike. And we've just got time for a very brief point from both of you on perhaps where we connect in perhaps with learnings from our business, our civic spaces, I suppose, in terms of leadership, and some space around culture, if either of you want to jump in on that. So maybe Teresa, just anything from there from you?
You know, I don't think we should ever demonise. I think we have a lot, and the document from the Southern Cross actually shows us that we can hold what our civic responsibility is and our ecclesial responsibility, and there doesn't have to be a tension. And I think that's like the learning that we have. So, you know, in New South Wales and in Australia, there's a massive amount of legislative requirements that we have. And we can, I think some of our issues are we can get stuck in that space and we can look like a really good corporation and we can lose sense of our ecclesial responsibility. What do we actually stand for? And so that, I think that continues to be a tension, but we have much to learn from both spaces. And you know, in New South Wales and Australia, where we've had so many different royal commissions, you know, I think organisations are struggling around leadership. And I like what Mike said, you know, we need to focus on leaders, but leaders within our church organisations. So how do we form leaders for mission and culture in the church space, holding our civil, canonical and ecclesial responsibilities, the tension that exists there. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks. And one last point from you, Mike, and then we'll open up the groups for discussion.
Just a note about culture, really, and we're obviously going through structural change, but we've got to keep reminding ourselves this is about a spiritual foundation we're trying to lay in all we do. And just a couple of practical examples of how that looks. One here in the diocese, in our interim diocesan centre here, which we've been for 10 years, and it'll be a couple more years before we move into a new centre. The chapel's been built, a room turned into a chapel, and we have weekday mass here, 8:30 on a weekday when the bishop's available, so 1, 2, 3 times a week. And for me personally, I've seen the impact that's had on our culture here in a diocesan office in a real positive way. So that's just a practical thing from a diocesan point of view. Culture for a parish. One of our parish leadership teams meets regularly now, 1 hour on a Thursday they pray together in the church. So they've been saying to people, this is what we're doing as a team. You're welcome to come and join us if you'd like. So again, it's building that culture of prayer and the spiritual foundation. So it's not just about reorganising deck chairs in the structure. It's about keeping that spiritual foundation. And I can think of one of our wonderful pastoral associates in our parishes. She's a great prayer. So somebody walks into the parish office who's in need, she would just happily just pray for that person if that person's comfortable. So, you know, the prayer is such an important aspect for us to come back to, rather than just thinking about structural reorganisation. It goes hand in hand.
Fantastic. Look, we're just going to break up just for about 10 minutes just to give you a chance to maybe debrief with a few other people here. So Lisa's going to pop some questions into the chat, which she's just done. And the main thing is if we can have someone just to introduce yourself again, the groups may be different, and choose a facilitator just to keep your time moving. So you've got about 10 minutes for this, and it will be coming back around midday. So thank you, everyone. You've just click the join button, and we'll see you back here shortly. Just waiting for a few more people to come back. I think we're all here. So welcome back, everyone. I hope that was at least again a chance to tease out, beginning to tease out some of the questions and wisdom. And as someone has just said, yes, 10 minutes isn't enough. It's just a conversation starter. So what we're doing here is to prompt some of our thinking, and if we can into the chat now, just to post any comments or questions that you might have. Now, obviously, today isn't the time to answer everything, but if we can capture your questions or your wisdom, and what we will do is put together an FAQ, which we'll send to you shortly after. Obviously, we won't have all the answers either, but it will be to keep this conversation going. But if I want to now, we've been talking to people at a diocesan level, but I just wanted to move across to one of our 2 people more on the ground. So I'm going to cross to Father Justin Driscoll. He's the Cathedral Administrator at St. Patrick's at Ballarat, and he's with Sue Crow, Parish Councillor, just to share some of their learnings and experience of leadership. So thank you, welcome Justin, and welcome Sue.
Thanks Richard, and good morning, good afternoon to everybody. Greetings from Ballarat, and it's not just Sue Crow and I that are here from Ballarat. We've got Leo, who's chairing our parish council, Tommy, who's a member, and we've got Father Shaju and Anita and Kerry, who are our parish coordinator and our finance officer respectively. So we're working together in this space, and we are trying to, I guess, work together. And a year or 2 ago, we had Chris Lowney come and visit us, and he went around the country, and he talked a lot about the way forward in leadership for the Catholic Church around co-responsibility. And it was really building on what we'd already heard. And I think for us, it was the apostolic exhortation of Pope Francis on Evangelii Gaudium that really gave us some fresh insight and some impetus to say, well, what's this parish about? And he highlighted that it was about hearing God's word, growth in Christian life, dialogue, proclamation, charitable outreach, worship and celebration. And that sounded like a big thing for us to try and get our heads around. So, but he also talked about undertaking wise and realistic pastoral discernment. And I think that's been helpful for us to be part of a wisdom tradition. So seeking the inspiration of what is God asking of us. And I think that's certainly something that the plenary council process has helped us in. We're really learning the art of discernment. And not just us, I think the whole church is learning the art of discernment. And synodality is not going to be just a one-off time of the plenary council. It's got to be a way of being church, of working together. So I think that's really important for us to say wise and realistic pastoral discernment. That emphasises we're walking together, we are co-responsible, and that we are willing to listen. For our parish council, can I say, I think one of the helpful things has been for us has to actually take up Cecilia Anning's Parish Pastoral Council Handbook. It's got a few years on it now, but you know, it's a really good guide, and she highlights for us what our role as a council is about enriching the quality of our parish life, about providing opportunities for our parishioners to grow and to discover and to really engage in the mission of Christ, of transformation. So that's been good, and we've done a couple of things over the years together, recent years. One of the things, we held a parish expo, and every parish group, every ministry, every Catholic organisation that exists in our parish, and there are many, many, many of them, and there's this fantastic weekend in our whole hall that we used, and we had probably 40 expos, and you know, we had hundreds of people getting a bit excited about, look what's already happening, and how do we animate and keep this alive. The other thing we've done is picked up Cecilia's models for parish assemblies, and they keep saying the process of consultation and collaboration can take many forms, and one of them's a parish assembly. And she asked us to look at a couple of questions to get people talking. Was, what aspects of parish life do we find helpful? What aspects of parish life require improvement or development? What initiatives would you like to see? What suggestions do you have for enriching our life? So these were questions for engagement, and I guess our Parish Pastoral Council is trying to engage with as many people as possible. So each parish councillor is the contact person for a whole series of groups or ministries. So it's trying to share the leadership around. So that's really important for us as we try and do all of that together.
Thanks, Justin. And one more point, perhaps, and we keep
one
moving.
more point is simply to say, in terms of culture for Catholicism at the moment, in a suffering space, leadership needs to be trustworthy. And I think that's a real challenge for us.
No, thank you. I think it's terrific to hear from that parish experience, and certainly, and a few people are asking what was the book that was mentioned, so you can see that's come up in the chat. We'll give you links to some of these resources as best we're able to get, and this video will be available, of course, afterwards as well. There's plenty of questions coming through. We'll be capturing them through our frequently asked questions after this gathering. So please keep them coming, or again, if you've got some wisdom, some people are popping up some good resources there too, which is fantastic. But I do want to now move to our other speakers from the parish space. And so it's John and Uta France. They're members of the parish leadership team at St. John Vianney Parish at Morisset in the Maitland-Newcastle Diocese. So welcome, John and Uta. And again, just some sharings from you in your space, and maybe just to explain that model a little bit, because it sounds a bit different than what some people will be familiar with. Thank you.
My name is John, and as Richard mentioned, I'm a member of the parish leadership team at Morisset Parish. As Teresa Briley mentioned, that our diocese has a number of models of parish leadership, and our model of parish leadership is the leadership team. We have also a priest supervisor, a sacramental priest, parish pastoral council and finance council. And the model of leadership in our parish has been established on Canon 517.2 And I might just hand it over now to you to take it on a little bit further.
Canon 517.2 said, if because of a shortage of priests, the diocesan bishop has judged that a deacon or some other person who is not a priest or a community of persons should be entrusted with a share in the exercise of pastoral care of a parish, he is to appoint some priest who, with the powers and facilities of a parish priest, will direct the pastoral care. And under that canon, it was established that we as a parish in Morisset, our best shot would be as a leadership team rather than one person. In 2014, we lost our parish priest. There wasn't anyone else available. We had to look at other ways of being parish. And after a lot of discussion and study, we decided we'd go on with parish leadership team. So today we have a team of 3 people. We started with 7, but attrition has taken over. But we all work under with our diocese under 5 pastoral foundations, and we share out the work between us. So we have number 1, identity and community, worship and prayer, formation, mission and outreach, and leadership and structure. Now my focus is worship and prayer and formation. John has oversight of leadership and structure and mission and outreach. And Juliet co-leads with leadership and structure because obviously it's a big foundation, and also identity and community. But we all meet together and we all have input and we're all aware of what's going on. Father Jeff is our supervisor priest, and he's kept in the loop fully about everything that happens. He receives our minutes from all our meetings, and he celebrates Mass with us twice a month, sorry. He's also overseeing Toronto Parish, which have gone for a single leader. Since March, we've been blessed with Father Kevin as our sacramental priest. And unfortunately, the week his feet hit the ground, we got locked down. So we're doing the best we can with COVID restrictions, and we're all trying to find out how we're going to work together. As a leadership team, we're responsible for the day-to-day administration of our parish. Major decisions in our parish are made at a parish gathering, but the really big major changes for our parish structure and all of those big deals are done at a parish assembly. As a parish, we aim to have a gathering once a year, so we plan our year and to keep our people informed. You know, it's a lot of work, but when it's done, our people own the process, and then it's just a matter of implementing the plan. We enlist our pastoral council to help with that preparation, with the running of it, and also evaluating of that gathering. In normal times, we meet weekly or fortnightly, depending on things that are happening. The Pastoral Council meets monthly, and we also have an active finance council which meets monthly. The bottom line is that as parish leaders, we are the juridical persons in our parish, and so we're required to undertake ongoing professional development and also undertake supervision. And we also join with our priests and our bishop regularly in information sessions, both temporal and spiritual, for training days. And we've even been invited to their retreats, which was great. We're blessed that in our neighbouring parish, Toronto also has embraced lay leadership. Slightly different slant with a paid leader. Father Jeff is priest supervisor of both parishes, and we often get together and share what's working, what isn't, how we do better, or just to ring up and say, I needed a break. Our parish has been with us every step of the way, and we're hopeful that in future we'll be able to recruit successors to take over from us. So as I said in our breakout group, one of our jobs is to lurk with intent, to get others involved and hopefully take the baton on. As you can tell, I'm not that young. Take over.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Uta and John, and yes, very much our I suppose thanks for what it's another pioneering space in our church, and we will endeavour to incorporate some of a bit more detail about the experiences of these emerging models of church in some of the FAQ that we're putting together. I think we've almost blown up the chat space with all your questions, comments, and there's some really good book offerings there that will keep us going for the next few years. We will need to bring things to a close. We just want to acknowledge some of the questions that have been emerging. One that came up was about, we use the word professionalism and lay professionals. It is a space that people are saying there's concern. Is this another elitism in the church? Is this a lay clericalisation, for instance? How do we avoid some of that? And so that's something that we'll attempt to point you to some people who have reflected on this space. The first thing I read about this was about 20 years ago, so we'll see what we can find there to share. Collaboration and co-responsibility, there's certainly some more about how that space is emerging in our church, and some of the cultural challenges, the challenges of international priests, the challenges that have been experiences also in that space of, I suppose, with the structures, as they emerging, some of the tensions that exist in change management. So look, we're not here to answer everything today. Best practices, I think we've heard today, is really a relational experience. So to be involved in best practice, at least from my experience, has been very much to accompany Peter onto the beach after the resurrection to encounter Jesus, that place of vulnerability where Peter has fundamentally felt that he has failed and yet encounters Jesus as one person to another. And the question Jesus says to him is not, why did you betray me, but do you love me? That's always a space of authenticity, of movement back to the center of our hearts. So we encourage you to, I suppose, as we finish today, think a little bit about what is that space of encounter with Christ that we're currently at? Where is that space that we find ourselves with Jesus and one another? And how much can we share that with others in leadership? How are you going? What's it like for you at the moment? Are you fearful? Are you optimistic? As someone said at the beginning, are you annoyed? When we start hearing the person behind the role, I think we're moving to a place of authentic leadership too, and becoming. So, but we really are just on time today, so we have a few people to thank before we close, and Lisa might just pop up a little slide for us. Firstly, in terms of where we can obtain some more information. After today, obviously, if this has churned up things for you, if you're getting excited, you can contact obviously your local diocesan office. You ask for someone around planning or mission or pastoral parish support. Obviously, you contact your neighbours down the road too. It's all about, you don't have to go to the diocese, you can go to the community next door, as we heard from John and Uta. Mission Planners Network are very keen to support, and so is our Pastoral Ministry Network. So there's a few contacts for you if you are struggling or if you've got wisdom, etc. And we also want to offer thanks today. So just in our next slide, a big thank you, first of all, to Mike and Teresa. Thank you so much for your time and contribution today. Of course, to John and Uta and to Justin and the team that he works alongside. And we are grateful for, as you can see on the screen, just those networks of the Pastoral Ministry Network, the mission planners, and the diocese that have behind the scenes have done work in either recording or making sure this can come to life today. We, in terms of a next webinar, well, first of all, you can see there will be a survey asking for your feedback about this one. This is the second of our webinars. We can also give you a link, of course, to our first webinar if you missed that. There will be some resources, as I've been hinting at, to accompany this webinar, and that's based on a lot of our experience and the questions and wisdom emerging today. And if you want to, if you can tag the 8th of December, where it won't be a very heady space for the next one. It's going to be very much a heart space, not to say this wasn't today as well, but an Advent recollection. So it's just a chance to reflect on the joys and struggles of 2020. The sharing in groups, and that occasion is going to be the bulk of the time. So it won't be anyone too much leading from the front, just a space of encounter with others on that missionary journey, and to share how we're moving in that space. So we thank you very much for your presence here today. We hope that at least it has stirred your hearts in some way in terms of that experience of best practices, recognising that the best practices really lay with our God, and that we are on a journey more and more into that space of God's reign. It's an emerging space, a challenging space, but hopefully a rewarding space for us too. Our prayers are very much with you, and that support is there. We are part of a network here, and we encourage you to remain connected and share your wisdom as well as your struggles. We're not alone, we're with our God, and we're with one another. Thank you so much for your time today. God bless you, and we wish you well.